David, nice to meet you. To answer the question that you posed in your email about operating in a gray space, I think this entire past year, being a part of the National Innovation Team on the American Heart Association was a gray space. I was charged with launching a program focused on prevention as well as fundraising within the high school community, which was a group that the American Heart Association had never previously worked with in a defined way. And so not only was it the figuring out, how do I recruit schools? How do we bring new people, excuse me, into the fold and into the mission of the American Heart Association, but also building this program as we were recruiting people. However, I think like so many people, when COVID struck, it was a completely new gray space because everyone else around us was also operating in a gray space that was very distilled and very concentrated. And so when COVID struck, it really forced me to refocus what had been happening. To give some context, I was launching the American Heart Challenge with schools, and what that program looked like was really in the fall recruiting schools, bringing them in, starting to build the foundations of those relationships. But then it was really working with student leadership groups. About 3 months of behind the scenes planning to launch the American Heart Challenge at their school, which was a month-long program that had different prevention and education opportunities around heart disease embedded within the month. And then it ended with a culminating event to celebrate everyone that had taken part in the programming throughout the month-long period. And so most of my schools were doing this in the spring. Once COVID struck, it was initially, I think I knew that I needed to take actions that answered 3 main questions. The first being, how do we still deliver this preventative information to these school partners? The second being, how can we still fundraise to deliver those life-saving dollars to the American Heart Association so that they can continue to do the research needed to move the needle on heart health. And then lastly, it was, how do I support the partners that I have spent almost a year building? How do I support those school administrators, those school coordinators? Traditionally, I was working with a student leadership group like Student Council or National Honor Society or gym classes, or just a group of maybe 10 students that wanted to make an impact with their school. So these coordinators were also, during this time, trying to actually teach math or teach science to their students. And I knew that this was no longer their number one priority. And so I wanted to maintain those relationships. But I think also during this time, felt catalytic because it was also really thinking about what new opportunities exist. And so I took the action of figuring out what schools had previously said no to us or had previously not been asked to take a part in this program that now maybe we are a better fit for them. I knew that our program could offer virtual service hours, and so many schools require high school students to receive a certain number of service hours before they graduate, right? So whereas before maybe they were working at planning to volunteer at the food bank, that was no longer a possibility. Could this now come in and take place for that, and could a new partnership be built through that angle and filling that need of the school community? The first action I took to really address these questions was my manager charged me with creating a way to virtually deliver this information that our entire innovation team would use across the country. And so I knew that it needed to be something that was no additional work for the coordinators, no additional work for the school community because they were already overwhelmed. I tapped into my TFA network, and I tapped into those school partnerships that were the most strong, to say, how can I support you the most right now? What do you need from someone outside of the education system that can support you during this time? And I took that information to create a 2-week virtual program where each day students would receive an email message that included a tie to our mission, included a fundraising opportunity if they felt comfortable, which was a shift from how we had previously been approaching fundraising. It took the opportunity for students to stay heart healthy in their home environment, and deliver a little bit of that mindfulness, because we knew that there was, because what I was hearing from so many people was that there was, and from research, was that there was going to be like a mental health crisis, kind of under the surface of this, of COVID. And so, created this program so that I could not only be supportive of my partnerships, but also maintain those goals that I was originally charged with at the beginning of the year, even though the goals had now shifted. So I think when thinking about what did it mean to be successful during this time, it meant still maintaining those relationships. It would have been very easy for a teacher to say, I've got enough on my plate, we're going to tap out right now, and we'll revisit this next year. But it was really figuring out how can I maintain those relationships so that this potentially life-saving information around prevention of heart disease is being delivered to students. I'm proud to say that I had the lowest attrition rate of all my school partners on the innovation team. That's something I take great pride in. I also, in terms of defining what it meant, like I had mentioned previously, it was a new opportunity to build new relationships and new partnerships. So I'm proud of the new schools I was able to bring into the fold that have also recommitted to partner with the American Heart Association again next year, right? So, so that was very exciting. And then the fundraising dollars. Obviously, the goal of the numeric goal of what you know, I was originally charged with for fundraising was shifted, and that was in a gray space because no one knew what was it going to look like in this time of financial uncertainty, but then also in a completely virtual space. And so that was shifted. But really, I worked with my manager on a weekly basis to say, at the beginning of the week, here's my numeric goals, and here are the action steps I'm going to take to get there. But also, at the end of the week, I could reflect back and say, here's where I could push more, here's what actually needs to shift, and how am I going to, and here's my new plan for that shift. In terms of how did I feel during this time, initially it's exhilarating because I am someone that really enjoys that vision setting, strategic planning, backwards planning, getting those benchmarks in. I enjoy that process because I like a strong direction and where I'm operating. And I know that when that is gray and not very certain, it's important to set either those daily goals or weekly goals to keep yourself going. And so that was exciting to me of saying, hey, this is now a new opportunity. How am I going to be holding myself accountable? How am I going to be continuing to drive forward? And how am I going to still be supporting my team and the relationships and partnerships that I built? I think it was also, like I had said before, it was catalytic in the sense that because this was happening, there was so much more opportunity that had previously been dismissed, or not necessarily dismissed, but it was like, okay, we're out of the recruitment season, which is heavy in the fall, and now we're in the execution stage, right? Because this was happening, it was an opportunity to say, hey, we can go back to the recruitment stage while also following through on this execution stage that we were in. So that was exciting as well. Looking back, in terms of what lessons did I learn. I think I learned a lot about the idea of proximity to the problem, and really recognizing that I knew my school partners the best. I was the one working with Gen Z students every single day. And there were some ideas, excuse me, I have a summer cold. There were some ideas in the fall that I had previously, pushed for or tested out, but I hadn't launched on a full scale. And so I think it reminded me again that I'm the one doing this work day to day. And so if there is a new idea, I should be more, don't be scared to really push for it and test it out. I think I also learned that, one size doesn't fit all. When I created this virtual program, it was, like I said, a way to bring new people into the fold. And it forced me to realize what was preventing me from doing this virtual program originally, right? Why did it always need to be in person? For some schools, that was too much of an undertaking. And what were some alternatives that I could have done to get those schools on board in the fall and say, hey, if this is too much time, too much energy, too much effort, here's this virtual option that we can slip in, right? So that was very important in terms of learning. I think lastly, like I said, I am someone who really loves that strategic vision and setting those benchmarks and working towards that. And it reminded me the importance of building reflection into those benchmarks. I think, sometimes you get so into the grind and the minutia of the day-to-day actions that it takes to be successful that you really do need to schedule in that time for reflection to step back. I think, I was doing that, but I wasn't doing it in a formulaic way. And so making sure that that exists in this gray space is so important moving forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm excited to talk with you tomorrow, and I hope you have a great start to your week, David.